now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Delivering these days can be frustrating. You can either wait forever or pay insane prices to get it faster. Even then, you still have no idea when it'll reach its destination. That's where Miracle Brokers comes in. We are flexible, reliable, and most importantly, fast. Whether you need household relocation, delivery services, full custom brokerage, overseas consolidation, commercial moving, packing materials, overseas consolidation, or inter-island moving, we offer exceptional logistic services all around the world that suits your individual needs. Just choose when, where, and what your delivery will be. You can even get it delivered same day. What's more, we'll choose the best courier for you based on your delivery requirements. This means less waiting and less hassle for you. Because we don't just say we care, this and much more make us a great option for you. Discover our shipping solutions and more at miraclebrokers.com today.
Good morning, folks. How are you guys? I'm on location today. Good morning to everyone. I've got my sunglasses on because, of course, the one day that I really have stuff to do, my eyes are a little bit irritated. So I've put in my drops already for the day. So I'm hoping that this will help me just a little bit. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I see a lot of you are logged on for this morning's discussion. So why am I on location? Well, you know, life doesn't stop just because I have this show or we're doing things with Cayman Mall Road. So this morning is the day of reckoning for me, apparently. One of, I guess, many days of reckoning that are yet to come. So I'm back in court this morning for the Matthew Leslie case. So you guys will remember, I just want to give you a little bit of a recap in terms of what has been going on with that. So we had, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember now. The time just goes by so quickly, but we had during COVID, the trial. It started in sometime in June. And, you know, delays. We're now in August trying to wait on a verdict from the judge. So the judge in this matter is, let me just adjust this camera a little bit, is Justice Chappelle. I opted to have a judge-alone trial in this instance. I think for the next ones, I may go with a jury. I don't know yet. I'm trying to still flush that out. But there's more to come. That's the best part of all of this. They're not done with me. The DPP has a lot of time for me, folks. And maybe it's worth going through a little bit of history in terms of what's going on with that before we then jump into some other stuff. But yeah, so he was supposed to give us a decision, I think, last month, but he's very busy. He's in the UK and he's hearing a couple other like really significant cases. So, you know, I'm not really at the top of the list. Like I haven't committed murder or anything of the sort. So I was actually explaining to someone yesterday, I've really lost count. I think this may be like the 5th, 6th, or 7th case now with the DPP's office. It may be more, to be honest, but they're always dragging me in court for stuff. It started with them alleging back in, I think it was 2009, that I had stolen a dog that I had actually rescued. And in this country, hey, when you speak up and when you say, not only did I not steal this dog, but I actually called the police, reported the dog to the police, asked them to help me, and then you show up at my door telling me that I've stole somebody's dog, like on a matter of principle, I have an issue with that. And so they dragged me through the court. And, you know, every time they drag me through the court, I always make them look like a bunch of buffoons. Buffoons? No, baboons. Buffoons. Is that a word? Anyway, You guys know what I mean? So, unfortunately for me, is every time I make them look bad, they're just sitting there waiting in the wings for another opportunity to have a go at me. And so, anyone who wants to complain about me, if you think I'm wearing an offensive shirt today, run to the DPP's office, run to the police, report it, because it will mean that I'll get dragged into court. Like, that's how ridiculous it has gotten on a really honest level. Like, it's just unbelievable. So this particular case, you have to excuse me because I've got mosquitoes I'm in an outdoor space, and I feel like the mosquitoes are going to eat me alive during the show. I've already killed one on my arm, and I'm just kind of watching them come at me, right? But anyway, this particular case is Matthew Leslie. I'm claiming that in 2019, I did a podcast, I think it was in February, about him, and he claims that podcast amounted to harassment. So what the DPP did is initially they had me charged with two things: harassment under the ICTA law. So there's a section of the ICTA law that says if you use an ICT device, so in other words, if you send someone text message or internet or whatever, to annoy, harass, or something, there's like three things, that is an offense. And then there's also a very similar offense under the Cayman Islands Penal Code. Let me just see if I can pull up the ICT law. And I want to read you guys that section. But anyway, they ended up dropping the more serious offense, which was the Penal Code offense. So they've left it on record, right? Which kind of technically means that they reserve the right to try to revive it at any time. But they've given the court their word that that will not be done. I personally think the reason that they dropped it is because the penal code is a more serious offense that requires them to prove that I had the mental element, that I was intending to harass him, annoy him, whatever, right? And they cannot prove that. That's my opinion, and trust me, they can't prove that. The ICTA legislation doesn't require any proof that I actually intended necessarily to do it. It says intended, or basically that I should have known or foreseen that it could have annoyed him. So that's a very different standard. It's almost like when you get a traffic ticket, they don't need to know what you were thinking when you were speeding, when you were careless driving, because in law there is something called mens rea and the actus reus, right? This is law school 101. First year law students learn this in criminal law. So a lot of offenses, or the vast majority of offenses, you've got to prove both in order for an offense to be committed. But there are some offenses which they consider strict liability offenses, where you don't have to prove what the person was thinking or what they intended or anything like that. And those tend to be like traffic offenses. That's why you notice if someone gets convicted of a traffic offense, they're not going to normally like lose their job or anything of the sort. It's just a question of, were you carelessly driving? It's a question of fact, right? It doesn't matter what you were thinking. It doesn't matter what you intended to do. That's strict liability. So strict liability is, it just is what it is. Then there's some offenses that are a little bit on the lower end. So they don't really require a true intent. They just require, it should have been foreseeable. And the standard of test that they use for that is normally a combination of the subjective test. So in other words, with the average person on the street, in these circumstances, would they have been able to foresee that this could have, been the consequence? And then specifically, it's subjective to the individual and looking at, their specifics. And, well, maybe you should have known it because he's told you before that he's, doesn't like what you do and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, my position has always been, how does someone get annoyed, harassed, or whatever by the truth? And I mean, there was nothing that I said about Mr. Leslie that was not the truth. And, or very much my opinion, right? So at the end of the day, he brought this complaint. The police took him up on it. They've said to me, in fact, that he had brought a number of complaints in the past, and they've always told him that his complaints were of a civil nature. But this particular time now that I did the podcast, they said, okay, they felt like this crossed the threshold into a criminal case. Now, not only have they made that argument, but the judge has said when he took on the case that the facts of what I was alleging in my podcast, the allegations against him, the numerous complaints against him all over this community, whether those things are true or not has nothing to do with this case, right? So no one is there to prove if it's true or if it isn't true, because that is a civil case. That is a case of defamation, which Mr. Leslie did not bring. What he has done instead is he has used the criminal justice system, in my opinion, to try to bring a civil case of defamation. Because even in his police complaints, he did like 2 or 3 different complaints, right? 2 different reports. He kept saying over and over and over again that she is defaming me. She's smearing my name. And those are all things of a civil nature, right? This wasn't a criminal defamation case. So in my mind, if you have a complainant who's sitting there going, okay, she's defaming me. She is, messing up my reputation. I've lost a business deal because of her, because someone saw these allegations against me. That's defamation. In my opinion, he never brought a defamation case because he knows everything that I've said. I can either, number one, prove it's in the public interest that people know these things about him. And also, let's just be honest, he doesn't have a reputation for me to defame in any way or to destroy. So people don't know that one of the things that you have to actually, in a defamation lawsuit, that you have to be prepared to prove is that you actually had a reputation worth damaging. And who doesn't know Matthew Leslie? I mean, a lot of people do. The only people that don't know him are people who are new to this island, maybe some of the younger girls who are coming up who haven't yet heard about his reputation. But most people know the dude. You mention his name and they're like, oh, hell no. Mothers are like, lock up your daughters, keep them tight, da-da-da-da. So, it's just shocking to me how many times someone has mentioned his name, and the women in the surrounding area who've heard like, oh my God, I have a story about him. And I was like, how many stories can women in this community have? And this individual still walks free amongst us. Like, I'm just like, what the hell? So he doesn't ever get charged with anything. He doesn't ever get hauled into court, but I do. So I just wanted to explain it to people because I think a few people were confused even about what type of case it is, why I'm in court, and that sort of thing. So I thought it was worth, going through a little bit of an explanation. So it doesn't matter if what I said was true or wasn't true. That isn't what's on trial here. It's really just a question of, did it ended up partially, the legal test is in the end, did it harass, annoy him? Or there's one other thing. It's like a 3 or 4 part thing. And annoyance is a very interesting concept because let's be honest, I can look at someone, give them a bad look, and that can annoy them. So the threshold is very, very low for this particular offense. I want to read some of your comments, and I've got a glare thing on this, so I need to take my glasses off to see it. But good morning, Yasser. Lizette, good morning to you, honey. Olivia's here. Miss Gina. David Holmes was commenting from last night. And Bruce was up at 4 o'clock in the morning commenting on this post because we're going to talk about the governor's decision that he made yesterday as well in terms of pushing through a form of a domestic partnership bill. So good morning, Cecile. Yasser says, good morning. Don't forget, please, the situation of the families of Cuban refugees. Thank you, Yasser, for that. Lizette said, they love you, Sandy. That's why you're always there. Yes. Well, Catherine, good morning. Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of an interesting dynamic between me and the DPP's office. And I mean, they keep coming at me. And I think for them, I have managed, I don't know if anyone, and I stand to be corrected, but I do not know of anyone in this community who they have dragged to court 6 times that they've never been able to get a conviction off of. And in fact, this was the first time that I've ever even had to mount a defense. So this is the first time I've ever taken a stand, I've ever testified. Every other case was thrown out at what they call the no case submission where basically the judge has said, this defendant doesn't even have a case to answer. That's how weak your case is. So this is the first one. I think it's so ironic, right? That of all the people in the world that could potentially lodge a complaint against me, that the one case that would go further than any other case would be Matthew Leslie. I mean, come on, folks. Like, really? This joker? I mean, I'm sorry, but seriously. And, the prosecution, their final question of me, I think, was incredibly telling. Because this prosecutor, I have found her rude and abrasive and unprofessional. And once the trial is over, I actually intend to lodge a professional complaint against her, because in my opinion, she really overstepped her boundaries as a professional member of the prosecution on more than one occasion. In case you guys are not aware, there is a principle in law, and I'm going to tell you exactly what the quote is, right? Because it goes back to a very long time. But there is a principle in law that basically says the role of the prosecution is to seek out justice, not to seek out a successful prosecution. So let me get you the exact quote, because funny enough, they have it up on their website as their so-called mantra. And I mean, the irony of that is like beyond, because, oh gosh, these mosquitoes, because we have seen that they have run afoul of this on more than one occasion. So it says here, and this is a case that dates back to, I don't even know what the original date of this case is, but this is a really old conviction. But it says, really old quote, sorry. It says, the duty of prosecuting counsel is not to obtain convictions at all costs, but to act as a minister of justice. So in other words, where they see that they're pursuing a case or something comes to their attention that makes it obvious that you're pursuing a frivolous case, or you have a defendant that is, being dishonest, or, this is more of a personal vendetta, which that's exactly what this case is, rest assured. This has nothing to do with the fact that I've committed any kind of an offense. This is Matthew Leslie trying to just kind of stick it to me. And he thinks that he can do that through the prosecution's office, because he hasn't really been successfully able to do that otherwise. So I'm just trying to see when where this quote exactly came from. So it was a case called R.D. Puttick, and it was actually an 1865 case. So if that tells you how long ago this sort of position that, there's a code of conduct that is expected of all lawyers, and even the DPP's office has a code of conduct. So there are things that they should. So this is what the quote said, and it was from a case in 1865 that had to do with rape. The defendant was charged with rape, and the prosecution had commented on the prisoner's failure to call witnesses. So Justice Crumpton at the time, back in 1865, says, I hope that in the exercise of the privilege granted to counsel for the prosecution of summing up the evidence, they will not cease to remember that counsel for the prosecution in such cases are to regard themselves as ministers of justice and not to struggle for a conviction. Isn't that interesting? Not to struggle for a conviction, nor be betrayed by feelings of professional rivalry to regard the question at issue as one of professional superiority and a contest for skill and preeminence. It is to be feared. Juries are in danger of being led away to give verdicts rather under the influence of feelings excited by the speeches on one side or the other than in accordance with the evidence. So again, the prosecution has a legal responsibility to not just get a conviction, but they are supposed to be ministers of justice, and they should be seeking to do the right thing. And so I find it more than interesting and peculiar that the prosecution would have done sufficient evidence into this man's character, I hope, to know the type of person that Matthew Leslie is, and to get up there and try to paint this picture of him where they have alleged that, he's some kind of a saint, and I'm even capable of harassing him with the truth, I think is an amazing contention to be making. And so, at the end of the day, that is the allegation. On. Okay. So this says low battery. I think that's why that dropped out. Sorry about that, folks. Seems like the internet just temporarily dropped out there. Yeah, so that's where I'm at this morning. I've got court at 9:15, so I finally will get the verdict in terms of, what the court's decision is in this matter. How do I feel about it going into it? I'll be honest with you. This is the first case where I'm like 50-50. It could go either way. There were a number of things I didn't like about the trial itself. Some of those had to do with, legal counsel. Others had to do with, obviously I'm having to do this trial by Zoom. I opted to do it by Zoom trial because I just want to get my life over with. So the option was to delay this indefinitely, which, by the way, the prosecution wanted to do, at least take a 6-month delay, not knowing even when we would get a date. Because as you guys know, COVID interrupted a lot of things today. And the COVID interruption meant that, now that the court is kind of getting back to having jury trials and so on, that there's still restrictions in place. And what will ultimately happen is people have their court cases pushed back for a very long time. So the option for me really was to, have your court case pushed back for an exorbitant amount of time, or do you just say, what, let's go with this Zoom format and see what happens? So I opted to go with the Zoom format because these things, despite the fact that I seem to take it with a certain degree of ease, it does interrupt my life, like psychologically, emotionally, and even just my time. It's an interruption in my life, my schedule, the whole 9 yards, right? And it takes a lot to mount a defense against the DPP. They have unlimited resources. Even if a person, and this is so incredibly unfair in my opinion, but even if a person is granted legal aid, do you guys know that oftentimes the legal aid department will put a cap on what someone can and can't do in terms of the amount that they're allowed for defense counsel? So that limits you. That limits you to the quality of lawyers that you can get. That limits you to who wants to take your case, because a lot of lawyers don't want to take legal aid cases because they know of these issues and these limitations and so on. So it's an unfortunate situation. That's a whole other argument. But I do think the legal aid system in the Cayman Islands at some point needs to be revamped. It should be a case where anyone accused of a criminal offense that has to go to court should have access to legal aid, and there should be no caps on it. You set up the equivalent of what they have for the DPP's office, where those people are paid a salary. You have an office, the Office of Public Defenders. They have it in other jurisdictions, so it's nothing new. And you hire a complement of staff that their responsibility is to defend people who are accused of different things. And it's not that the accused has to go out there trying to find a lawyer that will take their case on a legal aid basis. So there's a lot of issues that I always consider when going into this type of a situation. But yeah, I feel a bit 50-50 about this. It could go either way. I have made up my mind psychologically not to allow this to impact me one way or the other. Obviously, nobody wants a conviction, right? The last question that the DPP's office asked me on the stand is the most telling question of everything that they asked me. Because she said to me, this is Diane Oku, she said to me, regardless of the outcome of this case, you're not going to stop, are you? And I was like, what do you mean? well, you're going to continue talking about Mr. Leslie. And I'm thinking, well, is that why I'm here? Am I here to punish me for something that I supposedly did wrong? Or am I here to stop me from doing certain things in the future? It's funny that she asked that question because I've always maintained the whole reason why I'm in court from the DPP's perspective is to try to put a gag order on me, a permanent one, and to stop me going forward. And Mr. Leslie would love that. He would love for me to have a conviction where I feel like, oh my God, I can never mention his name again. But can I tell you guys that obviously these people do not know Sandy Hill? So I said to her, I said, well, if Mr. Leslie, who is a public figure, or even as a private citizen, does anything that becomes newsworthy, just like anybody else in this community, he will be reported on. So it's not a question of, oh, because you've now been convicted or you've gone through this trial, you'll never, out of the fear of whatever prosecution, you will never talk about Mr. Leslie again. That's why we're here, right? That is why they're trying to do what they're trying to do. And I got that from day one. And I've said that to my lawyer. This is all about trying to curtail Cayman Mall Road, what I say, what I do. And to date, they have not been able to do that. So now they're trying it from a criminal prosecutory that's prosecutory, yeah, perspective, where they are hopeful that that will be the outcome. So I see a lot of you sending me some well wishes. Thanks so much for that. I just reached one from a good friend who says, wishing you all the best. Sorry, lost track of proceedings, but have faith in you. Another one says, good luck today. Thank you guys so much for that. So that's kind of where we're at. And yes, I think that the DPP, and just for the record, they have 2 more cases lined up for me. One is in relation to, I don't know if you guys remember the lady, the Honduran lady, whose husband wanted to come on the show and said, that she was here cheating on him and blah, blah, blah. So they've already served me with that one. And I appear in court on the 11th to answer to that charge. And then, although they haven't served me the summonses yet, my sources, because, I got sources all over, including the court's office, they have reliably informed me that the DPP has decided to charge me in relation to the protests that I was involved in with that jackass Wilson Mendoza. So they're claiming that I think one of the charges is that I supposedly was inciting violence or inciting a riot or some foolishness. Oh yes, Mr. Mendoza has never incited anything by his actions, right? So they are prepared to drag me in court in relation to the Mr. Mendoza case and Mike Adams case as well. And I know the Adams family feels really bad about that because they are, kind of blaming themselves, saying that, they're the ones who called me and were trying to get my assistance. And listen, at the end of the day, no one is to blame for any of this. It just is what it is. So good morning to Becca. Good morning, Joy. Good morning, Oldine. Thank you guys for tuning in on my personal page. And of course, the rest of you are either here on the CMR page or YouTube channel. So, so today's verdict day. We'll see what happens. I'm here for it, obviously. I've got to show up to court. And as soon as we get a verdict, I will do a live stream. So please stand by, hopefully before 10 o'clock. And I will let you guys know what the verdict is and kind of where we go from here. So I remain firm in my position that I've done nothing wrong. And, Mr. Leslie is in Belize. And I'm sure that he will be tuned in live because he seems to enjoy watching CMR despite his complaints about us. And, it is what it is. Now, I was sort of thinking about this the other day. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Well, according to the law, the worst that could happen is I could go to jail. So I could go to jail for annoying or harassing Mr. Leslie. The only person that has ever gone to jail in relation to this particular offense, so this, again, is the ICTA legislation because they dropped the penal code one. And I'm trying to get a copy of the legislation to read to you exactly what it says. But the only person that has ever gone to jail was Atto Stevens, who was using an ICT network to solicit sex from a minor. So I think that that certainly speaks volumes in terms of, what the court thinks of this section of the law. I don't think that this section of the law was ever intended to curtail media or curtail anyone's freedom, actually, of speech in this way. I think this is an overreach on the part of the prosecution, and they're doing their best, I guess, to try to get a conviction. So this overreach is it's what it is, and they will. I'm just trying to see if I can find the legislation. Yeah, so the overreach is definitely what it is, and I think it demonstrates a certain level of um, desperation on their part as well. So I'm trying to remember what version of the law, because the law has been revised a couple times over the years. And the irony of it is when they first came in with the case, the DPP's office, they're so sloppy sometimes, they even had the wrong law listed that they were actually charging me under. So they had an old version of the law listed, and my lawyer pointed out in court that they hadn't even gotten that right. So then, of course, the DPP has a lot of leeway. If you've ever dealt with a criminal case, you will know that. So they were able to go away and revise the charges and fix them because literally they were technically wrong. Like they just had me charged with a law that doesn't even exist. So, but they, like I said, let me see if I can find a section of this law. So they have the ability to go away. So section 90 of the ICTA law, it says use of an ICT device to defraud, abuse, annoy, threaten, or harass someone. So obviously I'm not defrauding anyone, but they're saying that I potentially have harassed him or annoyed him or abused him, I guess. Obviously I've not threatened him, I've not defrauded him. So it's a very broad section of the law, or of this ICT legislation. And again, how is harassment defined? How is annoyance defined? So that is section 90 of the ICTA law. And it says a person who knowingly uses ICT and network or ICT service to defraud, abuse, annoy, threaten, or harass any other person is guilty of an offense and liable on summary conviction to a fine of $10,000 and to imprisonment for 1 year, or on indictment or on conviction, on indictment to a fine of $20,000 and to imprisonment for 2 years. So the latter applies to me because it is a grand court matter. So, and I think that they seem to have done a little bit of maneuvering, because how they got it to the grand court is having that penal code section attached to it at the initial stage, and then that fell away. So they've been doing a lot of shenanigans. But anyway, folks, like I said, I don't really want to spend too much time more on it because we will have a verdict here this morning, hopefully, if all goes well. And I will just inform you guys of what the verdict is. And life goes on. Trust me, life will go on. Matthew Leslie will not be stopping me about talking about anything in this community that I feel is important for the people to know, and certainly not stopping me from talking about him. So good morning, JD. JD is looking for CC. Good morning, Irvelyn. Maria, thank you so much for tuning in. Ingrid says we got a birthday coming up. Both Ingrid and I are August babies. So Ingrid, remind me of what day your birthday is. I think yours is before mine. I'm the 18th. Debbie, thank you so much. Diana, thank you, darling, for tuning in. Tamara says, good luck, Sandy. You're a strong woman. Nothing will stop you. Thank you, Tamara. And, having strength is something that I think a lot of us have. There are things in life that will try to stop us, that may present themselves as roadblocks. And sometimes they knock you down completely. But trust me, You get up, you brush yourself off, and you just keep going. And that is life's number one lesson and life's number one motto. Never let anything defeat you permanently, because then what do you have to live for? You know what I'm saying? So regardless of whatever the situation is, I remain firm in my position. So Debbie says justice is on your side. Thank you, Debbie. Sean says long live Cayman Mall Road. Thank you so much, Sean. Ingrid says stay with God. Good morning to Ingrid Rivers. And Ingrid Jones says God is with you, Sandy. So hi, Carla. Sean says if they charge you in covering the Mendoza protest, any sensible Caymanian jury will let you go free. Well, Sean, I do believe that, because I mean, the facts of that case are so incredibly shocking in terms of what he has been able to get away with over the past almost 5 years. So, yeah, I think in that case that I will actually opt for jury trial, because I think a jury more than a judge will understand how, as Caymanians, we continue to be disenfranchised in this country and pushed aside, and no one's doing anything about it. And instead of dealing with Mendoza, they would rather drag me through court, drive Mr. Mike Adams through court, which they have already done, on the belief that, we're the ones who are wrong when we're trying to stand up for our rights. Janine, good morning, honey. How are you? Andy is watching as well. Anne says responsible are always in jeopardy under conspiracy. You'll be fine, as you always wear the banner of truth. Best wishes. And Ingrid reminds us that August the 12th is her birthday. So that's coming up next week, right around the corner. So yes, and I'm glad you said that. I've got to put some more eye drops in my eye here in a minute. But yeah, I mean, to me, the truth will stand regardless, There have been people who have been prosecuted and who have been, put in jail, not because they stood for anything that was wrong. I'm thinking about, sorry guys, my eyes are just really irritated today. I'm thinking about someone like a Nelson Mandela, and I'm not trying to compare myself to him. Please don't get me wrong. But, there are people who've lost their lives for standing on principle. John F. Kennedy, Gandhi, these people lost their lives because they said, this is a position that I'm going to take. This is the right position to take. This is the truth. And there are people out there who will stop you at all costs when you try to speak the truth. So I figure, what's the worst that could happen? I could get a jail. Okay. A jail in the Cayman Islands isn't really all that bad, to be honest. Obviously, I would not want my freedoms taken away. But, at the end of the day, who am I to complain? If that's what it's going to be, who am I to complain when there are others who've come before me, who have fought way more serious human rights issues and have put their lives on the line for those issues? So, the little bit that they're doing to me in the bigger scheme of things is really not that big of a deal, to be honest. So good morning, Alric. Alex says all the best. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. As you guys know, Alric has announced his candidacy, and this is one of the topics actually that we had on our agenda today. Before we move on to a few other things, Alric and Michael Miles have both announced their candidacy. There's a nice picture of Alric smiling. They both announced their candidacy for the 2021 election. It's May the 26th of 2021. The governor has already set the date, so we all know that that's the date for the next general election. And so congratulations to Alric. He's throwing his hat into the ring for Georgetown South, which the incumbent in that district is Barbara Connolly. And then we also have Mr. Michael Miles, who has thrown his hat in the ring. Michael has not said officially where he's running as yet, but you guys know CMR has a scoop on everything. So we have good reason to believe, actually, that Mr. Michael will be running in Prospect against Austin Harris. So, of course, all of these things are subject to change. No doubt about that. But that looks like what it's shaping up to be thus far. So they're out first, out of the barn first, taking an opportunity to let people know from now that they are running for public office. And so if you wish to reach out to them, I'm sure that both of them are open to your feedback and your commentary and your questions and so on. And of course, Alric is no stranger to Cayman Mall Road. If you missed the Conversations With segment that we did with him on Sunday, please check it out. It is a very interesting insight into Alaric and who he is. And I dare say we will be continuing conversations with him to learn a little bit more about what Alaric is all about and what he stands for. So Odette, good morning. So let's move on to the reason why probably 113 of you are here out of the 114 people that are watching right now. So here's the deal, folks. Yesterday, the governor's office made an announcement that he, in his office, in conjunction with the UK, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the FCO, will be exercising his legal authority under Section 88 of the Constitution to basically put through the a version of the domestic partnership bill. So you know that the governor has a reserve power under the Constitution to do something that's called orders in council. And, you know, the governor, I don't think exercises that very often because it is seen as a very sort of draconian thing to do. I don't know if draconian is the right word, but, you know, we handle a lot of our internal affairs as an overseas territory. And so it seems to me that the UK is happy for us to do that as much as possible. However, there are times when they have had to step in the past, and it doesn't happen often. But I dare say that apparently this is one of those cases where the UK has come to the conclusion that we are not able to deal with and handle this domestic partnership situation. So this is Section 81 of the Constitution that allows him to, again, exercise that overbearing power. And listen, no one, not myself or anybody else, likes to see the governor being put in a position to do this. Because, of course, the natural question then becomes, you know, when else will the UK or the governor via the UK exercise his power? So there's concern there that, wow, he exercises his power. But I also know from a realistic perspective that this is not something the FCO, the UK government, or the governor would have taken lightly by any stretch of the imagination. They will only use it in the most extraordinary of circumstances. And unfortunately for the Cayman Islands, this situation that we have found ourselves in does present the most extraordinary of circumstances. So this country has time and time again failed on multiple occasions to address the equality and the human rights implications of people in our community who are, you know, same, who are couples in a same-sex or bisexual, whatever partnership, because the partnership bill actually made no mention of a person's sexuality, right? So, but we know that it was being designed to try to address that issue as well as other people who might want to enter into domestic partnership. So we have failed. Our members of the Legislative Assembly hoodwinked some of you. I never for a minute thought that this was going to go away and the UK would sit back and say, oh, we're not going to do anything. In fact, in a very ironic twist of events, yesterday morning I was rushing to an 11 o'clock meeting. I was running a little bit late, so this probably would have been about 11:25, closer to 11:30. I was on the phone with a politician who had voted no, and they were trying to justify to me why they had voted no. And as part of that conversation, what came up was them saying, oh, well, the UK isn't going to do anything about it. I'm like, why do you think that? Oh, no, you know, they're not going to do anything about it. They're going to wait because this case is now going to the Privy Council with Chantal Day and Vicky Bodden. That is scheduled for February of next year. This MLA actually said he thought it was, I think, November or something of next year, but it's actually February, so I verified. And that the governor's office in the UK would just sit back and wait. I'm like, why? Let me explain, folks, for the benefit of anyone who has any doubts. Number one, you've been hoodwinked by everyone who voted no into thinking that this was going to go away and that their no vote actually mattered. Okay? Number two, people don't seem to understand the severity of what the United Kingdom is saying about this matter and what the courts have said. I've said before in this program, I'm going to say it again for reiteration. I have never, in all of my legal studies, and when you're in law school, you read so many different cases. I've read commercial cases, contract, employment law, criminal cases. I've read a slew of human rights cases. I'm not a qualified lawyer, but I've read enough cases to last me a lifetime, I'm sure of that. I have never seen a case where a declaration, where the party bringing the case has actually won their lawsuit, and the court then went as far as making a declaration that said, right, despite the fact that you have won, you need to do this. You need to fix it. And that is what the Court of Appeals said. The Court of Appeals said that the government of the Cayman Islands is in contravention of the human rights of these women and anyone else like them in this country. So we are, as a government, in breach of our own constitution. The Court of Appeal said to fix it with a sense of urgency. I can't remember the exact word that they used. It might have been like fix it forthwith, or how they use these legal words. But whatever that word was that they used, they meant ASAP, as soon as possible. COVID came in. The government has passed all kind of financial legislation. They've done the most with other stuff. The premier had no choice but to put this legislation on the books. Now, there are people in the opposition who were saying, oh, it was too rushed. The premier should have waited till October. They clearly don't get what the Court of Appeal said. Forthwith doesn't mean you wait until October, which would be pushing almost a year since the decision came down. That's not acting expeditiously. And I think expeditiously may have been the actual term that the court used. So that's not acting expeditiously, folks. And, these are legislators. These are people that we've elected to the LA who are supposed to have some basic understanding of the law. And it appears to me that they did not grasp what the Court of Appeal actually said. I'm going to have a little sip of my hot chocolate here. Oh, delicious. It appears to me that they did not grasp the severity of what the court was saying or what the word expeditiously means. The word expeditiously doesn't mean that you take your time. Oh, we needed more consultation. Folks, how much consultation do you need on this issue? Honestly, how much consultation would have been changing anybody's mind? This is a very straightforward issue. This is a human rights issue. Either you understand that and you're with it, or you don't care. You stick to your religious beliefs. You stick to your beliefs in God, and that this is what God has ordained. Blah blah blah. Whatever arguments you use in either side of this, no one is changing their mind. So you could address this from now until eternity. The Christians who have their position are not going to change their mind. Those of us who believe in equality before the law and human rights are not going to change our mind. The gay community, who's been ostracized by this country time and time again, legally ostracized, their position is not going to change. They're not going to wake up tomorrow and say, oh, well, I'm no longer going to be gay because you continue to breach my human rights. So, folks, I want us to be very clear. A delay would not have changed anything, in my opinion. They had ample opportunity to review the legislation, just like any other pieces of legislation. They have passed more, let me be quite frank here, they have passed more complex pieces of legislation than this, and they have debated it. They've come forward with amendments. They've made suggestions. So I'm not saying that this is a perfect piece of legislation by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't delve too deeply into it, to be quite honest, in terms of reading it section by section. There may have been areas of concern. You bring those, you bring proposed changes. And like any other piece of legislation that comes before the LA and is voted on, you have an opportunity to submit what those proposed changes are. But this overarching argument that, oh, this legislation is going to impact so many different areas of our lives. Really? Why don't you try telling that to the people who are most impacted by this legislation not passing? That community. Tell that to them. And they will tell you in a very precise way how many aspects of their lives are being impacted by there being no legislation in place. That's the thing. No amount of time in the world would have changed Alva Suku's opinion. No perfectly written piece of legislation would have changed his opinion. No perfectly balanced piece of legislation would have changed Juliana, Dwayne Seymour, or, with all due respect, Anthony Eaton's position. Their position is what it is, and it's not going to change. So they will always vote no. Now there's a lot of political wrangling that has happened behind the scenes that some of you are not aware of. And can I be very frank and honest with you as we have come to get to know each other on this program? I hope the one legacy that I will leave behind, no matter what, is that is someone who spoke up for hopefully what is right and who also spoke for the truth. And the truth of the matter is, you guys have been hoodwinked. You've been hoodwinked by your elected officials, because there are many of them, I would say, with the exception of Juliana and Mr. Anthony, who got up there and said things that I know for a fact that they do not personally believe. But they're trying to court the church vote and the Christian vote. I've had conversations, private conversations with many of them, or some of them, I should say, who've expressed to me that they believe that this segment of the population is entitled to equality and entitled to rights under the law. But yet you saw people standing up talking about marriages of convenience. The gay community is no more likely to engage in marriages of convenience than the straight community, the heterosexual community. And yet I do not see anyone up in arms about that. I do not see any piece of legislation being amended to address that issue. I don't even see any enforcement, really. People do it every single day, and immigration's like, well, we don't really know if they're in it for love or that $10,000 that the person was paid. So you're singling out the gay community, thinking that they're going to abuse this for what reason now? It just doesn't make any sense. The immigration law is there to deal with abuses of the system. And those abuses should be addressed no matter who you are. Ignoring this issue is to the detriment of our Caymanian people who happen to be gay, bisexual, transgender, whatever. It is to their detriment. It's not to the detriment of the expat population, because let me be very clear. We have already addressed their concern as it relates to a dependent being added onto their work permit. So again, there are a number of examples of high-ranking government officials that we have brought in from overseas who happen to be gay. And those people get the benefit of, they come in with an existing marriage, an existing domestic partnership, and the immigration department has to add that person on their work permit as a dependent. And there's nothing that can be done. So why would you be denying your own Caymanians those same rights? They can get insurance benefits. They can, what's the issue here? The issue boils down to one of hate, ongoing prejudices, and discrimination. So when the Court of Appeal said, you've got to fix this, they didn't mean, oh, just bring a bill and don't pass it, and that's a fix. The situation isn't fixed, folks. So the UK, and no one should have been surprised at what happened yesterday, and no one should be surprised how quickly it happened. The day of the decision, an MP in the UK said, this cannot continue. And I think he's the representative for Africa for the FCO or whatever. That alone should have woken people up. And I was having conversations that very next day with people who were like, no, my MLA tell me that the UK not going to do nothing about it, blah, blah, blah. Well, your MLA is a donkey when it comes to this particular issue. They are all jackasses as far as I'm concerned for voting no on this, and for also deceiving the people of the Cayman Islands to think that their no vote was meaningful enough that the UK would do nothing at all about this. Now, I know this fight isn't over, because these MLAs have some skin in this game, right? They need to try to prove to you the so-called Christian vote, because they want you to go out come May 26th and vote for them. So they're going to try to prove to you that, oh no, we can't let the UK do this. So they're going to push up them, chest them, and beat up the chest. And yeah, we need to stand up against the UK. We need to tell them this, that. Listen to me. The UK has reserved powers under the Constitution. We are not an independent country. And if the UK says, you know what? We have given you ample opportunity to deal with this, and you have refused to do it. Now it's time for us to step in. Then the argument becomes, why is it only Cayman they pick it on? Here's the thing. No other jurisdiction has a Court of Appeal decision that said in unequivocally clear language, in other words, the court never minced its words, you are in contravention of the Cayman Islands Bill of Rights, and of your own constitution. These women deserve equality under the law, despite the fact that you've won this case on your legal technicalities. You need to ensure that they have the legal equivalency of marriage recognition under the law. So we're not telling you to amend your marriage law. They wouldn't go as far as saying that, and that's why the governor isn't doing that either. But the court's position was very clear. Now tell me something, folks, and I'm not going to stay on here all day because I want to have a little bit of breakfast. I need to get in the zone to hear whatever my verdict will be today. However, if you go to court and the court says XYZ and you ignore the directives of the court, what do you think the consequences will be? The court has the power to throw individuals in jail for ignoring what the court says. So if you go to court even and you get your license suspended and then you turn around and you still go out there driving and you get caught, there will be consequences for you ignoring the court. So why is it that your MLAs were able to convince you that there will be no consequences for them ignoring the directives of the Court of Appeal? Why? Why did you honestly think and believe that this was a done deal by your MLAs voting no? What they have instead done is took the power out of the hands of your representatives who could have crafted and worked together and put a piece of legislation together that would have worked well for the people of the Cayman Islands. What you have now done is put it in the hands of a foreign entity, yes, the UK government, the FCO, and they will draft the legislation and they will tell you what it is. And you know what? At the end of the day, that's still a better option because we could go all the way to the Privy Council and the Privy Council could have said, enough is enough with you people. We're going to make you change your marriage law. So don't push the envelope, folks. I'm telling you, if you don't understand law and you don't understand what's going on here and what is considered equality before the law, be very, very careful. So everyone is sending around this this thing. I've seen it a couple times about the European Court of Human the European Court of Human Justice of Human Rights, saying that no one has a right to marriage. Well, yeah, a domestic partnership isn't marriage. I mean, so that's not what this is saying either. But the UK has given certain rights to the same community, and most civilized places in the world have. So we cannot continue to pretend like we're in the 1800s and that we're going to ignore certain provisions when it doesn't suit our personal beliefs or Christian beliefs or our supposed God-held beliefs. And like I said to someone earlier this week, the same arguments that are being used are the types of arguments that were used to deny people of color, aka Black people, colored folks, African Americans, whatever you want to call them, that have been used around the world to deny them their rights. Oh, God says this. Oh, the Bible says this. And there have been people who have laid down their lives on the line for the fights against inequality. And so we have signed up to live in a modern world. We have taken on a Bill of Rights. We have agreed in principle for all people to be treated equally. People have religious freedoms. So if I'm a person who wants to be a Buddhist, or I don't know what other world religions are out there right now, and atheists even, like I don't want to believe in anything, whatever, I have that right. And you cannot beat Christianity into my head. You can't beat morality into people, or your definition of morality, your viewpoint of morality. You can hold your views just like I can hold my views, and everyone else is entitled to that. So am I surprised at any of this? Absolutely not. I saw it coming, and I'm not surprised at how quickly it came either. Continue to fight this issue. My prayer for you is that you would have the amount of passion about the social and moral ills outside of this particular topic that are happening in our community. Because I swear that apparently this is the only topic that matters to some people. So Eden, thank you for your comments. Eden says, let me just see here. Sorry, I'm trying to just pull up Eden's comment. Eden says, and to the detriment of future Caymanians, Now, I hope folks in Cayman's LGBTQ plus community can feel more home in their own country. Equality finds a way. Debbie shares that everyone on this island gets full rights except gay people, including the members of the CMA who are not Caymanian. Foreigners denying born Caymanians their human rights. Piss off. South Marjorie had a good laugh at all donkeys. Yes, ma'am. South Marjorie also says Christian values are important, yes, but people choose the life they the life they love. This is happening all around us. Why try to play a blind eye to it in their own home? Their personal life is not our business. They are still equal beings. And again, I keep hearing all these arguments about, oh, well, these people, next thing you know, they're going to be pushing pedophilia on us. And I'm just like, Lord Jehovah. Like, seriously, people? The ridiculousness that people will go on with to perpetrate their hatred of this community, to me, is astonishing. No one is going to push any pedophilia agenda. And the gay community, just like the rest of us, are outraged by pedophiles, and they do not subscribe to that any more than anybody else does. There will be people who are gay, straight, whatever. They're the perpetrators. They are the offenders in our community that we will stop at all costs. But just because someone is gay does not make them a morally bad person. It doesn't mean that they're going to assault your child. They're going to groom your child to become gay. I mean, the fears and the arguments that people have out there, I mean, people need to really educate themselves. So with that, Remy reminds me that, of course, I've got court today. Woohoo! In about an hour's time, I will know my fate. I'm going to sit back now, enjoy my hot chocolate, enjoy my avocado smash, get in the right frame of mind to hear whatever the decision is. I'm going to relax and do my thing. As soon as I come out of court, I will live stream and let you guys know what the verdict is. So please stay tuned. I know some of our Cuban friends are logged in, asking me to address their plight. They still have not had a resolution to their situation as yet. I'm trying to get some more information on that, but today is Thursday, right? Yes. So we do have an evening show at 7 o'clock. So what I'll do this evening is hopefully I'll have some additional information on what is happening with the Cuban nationals, and I can update you guys. But again, they're still waiting on their food vouchers. They were promised by somebody, I think yesterday, that the food vouchers were coming. Somebody was supposed to resolve it, and still nothing has been done. So I'm going to get some confirmation on what's happening with them. So stay tuned for that. And I wish you guys a beautiful day. Yes, folks, the UK has spoken. It is what it is. Let's try to move on in a more peaceful and loving way on this particular topic. Hi, Barbara, honey. Barbara's tuning in all the way in Paris. And Irvlyn, thank you so much for the well wishes today. And be blessed, folks. And I'll be back shortly, probably by 10 o'clock, I would say, for the next live stream to let you know what the verdict is. So guilty or innocence? Guilty or innocent? Yes. I'm hoping for innocent, but, I've done nothing wrong. So even if they want to prosecute me for doing nothing wrong and for speaking the truth, it is what it is. Have a beautiful day, folks. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Take care.